Okay, welcome back to our Meet the Expert series from the Hume Region Palliative Care Consortium. This week we've got the wonderful Molly Carlile speaking to us. But to begin with, I'm going to start with an acknowledgement of country. So we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the people of the lands that we are speaking to you from today. We also pay respects to our elders, both past and present, as it is their knowledge and experience that holds the key to the success of future generations. Okay, so we've got Molly Carlile with us today. She's a multi-award-winning palliative care activist, author and international speaker, known as the Deathtalker, who supports ordinary people to be informed and feel more comfortable having difficult conversations about death and grief in order to live life fully. She's appeared on the telly and on YouTube and has a book or two, and I've got one of them here. Generally a powerhouse in the pal care world. She's recently taken over as the manager of the Victorian PEPA program, and we're going to hear all about that today. Molly, welcome.
Thanks, Rose. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's so exciting to talk to you. I've had this book on my shelf for quite a while, and yeah, I've seen you around the traps in all the conferences and things. So it's really great to have you here talking to us today. So can you tell us a bit about your new role, please?
Well, funnily enough, yes, it's a new role. I started in August last year, but it's not a completely new role to me because in 2003, I was the first manager of PEPA in Victoria when PEPA was at the department. So it's really interesting for me now, 20 years on, and because this is the 20th year of PEPA, to look at how far we've come. And when I went back into the role last year, the thing that really struck me was the breadth and depth of resources we now have, that when I first started back there in 2003, there was nothing. We had to create our own PowerPoints, our own lesson plans, and all our own spreadsheets for placements and all that stuff. Now we've got a whole system. We've got a fantastic learning management system with so many resources. So that was the thing that really jumped out at me, how much things had changed.
Yeah, wow. That's so you've come sort of full circle in a way. That's
yeah.
Forgive me, I didn't realise that you had been the pioneer.
That's okay. A lot of time's elapsed in between then and now, Rose.
Yeah. Look, I have to certainly echo that the fact that there's so many resources out there. In my new role, well, I've been here for 2 years now, working for the Hume Region in aged care and disability. In trying to prepare, like even a champion program for the aged care workers in the region, my colleague Sam and I decided that it would be silly to just write it all again because there is so much out there. So our focus is usually on, we give people the basics and then we point them in the direction of all the resources that are out there across so many websites. It's mind-boggling in some ways. It's a little bit overwhelming, but that's better than having nothing, isn't it?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And the other good thing about all the PEPA resources are they're designed in a very accessible way. So they're all in plain English. There's lots of images. There's lots of reflective exercises and that sort of stuff built into the resources. So they're not heavy with words and academic speak and, all of that stuff that can put people off. So I often think that the most skilled communicators are the people who can use the least amount of words and the shortest words to get their message across. And I have to remind myself of that a lot of the time because my mother was a bit of a stickler for a good vocabulary. And I find myself often using words that I think, oh, I probably shouldn't have used that word because it has like 10 letters. And there would have been something else that would have done just as well,
Yeah, well, healthcare is full of that sort of the jargon and the babble that we tend to get into. Right. We love to use those nice long words to describe things, but keep it simple, stupid.
Yes.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit about where it all started for you, how your journey towards, full-on palliative princess that you are, where did that start?
Look, I probably looked after my first dying patient when I was a student, really. And I tell this story a lot because it made a huge impact on me, because she was a 34-year-old woman with young children and she had liver cancer. And that was I can still see that woman's face. Like, she's very fresh to me because she taught me so much about hope, in realistic hope in the face of a terminal diagnosis. She taught me a lot about compassion. She taught me a lot about thinking creatively and about the fact that the length of time you have doesn't matter, it's the quality of that time. And I guess that for me, they were messages that really resonated. And I thought about it a lot after she died. And I thought, I was never one of those nurses who wanted to work in ICU or ED or any of those scary places with machines and, and stress and panic. I always felt much more comfortable in roles where I could have a real relationship with other people. And so palliative care was probably the natural place for me to be drawn to.
Yeah.
So I went from working in a general ward into specialist palliative care very early. My first real gig in specialist palliative care was at Bethlehem, at Calvary Bethlehem in Melbourne, and I learnt a heck of a lot there. That was an amazing place to, be baptised into palliative care. There was so much support, there was so much understanding, and of course at that time we had a lot of young men with AIDS that we were looking after. And so I didn't fall into the trap of, not of my own doing, but I didn't fall into that trap of thinking only old people died, because from very early in my career, I looked after a lot of young people and people who were younger than me at the time. So palliative care there was very focused on holism before that was the standard. And the whole approach was very person-centered, and we spent a lot of time with our patients, not doing stuff to them, but spending quality time listening and facilitating and trying to help them do what it was they needed to do to get the most out of every day. And I think I was lucky. I was really lucky to have that experience early in my career, because as time went on and I moved into other roles, I realized that everywhere wasn't like that. And so that's what really spurred me, I guess, to say, hey, we can be doing this differently, because I've seen it done differently and I know it works. So yeah, palliative care has always been my thing. And that whole lesson about it doesn't matter how long you've got, as long as you make the most of the time you've got. I think I've tried to live that myself, and always be aware that today might be the last one. So make each day count.
Yeah. No, that's a great privilege to have been exposed to those, really intense experiences at such a young age as a young nurse, but also to be in such a positive work environment and to learn all those great things. And yeah, I think palliative care is a sort of, once you've had a taste of it, and it's your thing, you can't go anywhere else, you know. You just don't want to be in any other kind of environment. I was a bit like that too. I think I realised from an early age that I wanted to be in the kind of work environment that was able to establish relationships with patients instead of just, you know, the look after the appendix in bed 16.
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
wasn't my style.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, great. I've mentioned your book a couple of times, and I'll show it again, even though it's backwards. It's called The Deathtalker, and that's who you are. I just wanted to mention that. It's a really good read, and part of the reason it's a great read is that there's a lot of stories in there, and I think using stories is a really useful way of teaching people. I know for myself, you know, I always latch on and remember stories that educators have told to illustrate points and that sort of thing. Yeah. And it's definitely a great sort of encapsulation of, you know, the issues that we face in, you know, living and dying in the 21st century, particularly about the loss of agency around the medical and funeral industries. You know, we've handed over, we've lost the baby with the bathwater in a way. We've handed over everything, and now we don't know how to die. You know, we've lost that innate knowledge and that community understanding. So since the book's publication in 2016, because it really is sort of like the foundational sort of issues, do you think that anything much has changed, or have we progressed anywhere since then?
Well, look, I must say at the outset, Rose, I've always used stories because I come from, you know, a very strong Celtic background where my dad told stories all the time. My granddad and my grandmother told stories all the time. And storytelling in our houses is integral to how we function as a family. And my kids are the same. And I've always learnt best from stories. So I think, you know, just to deviate a little bit, that's what got me involved in arts-based approaches to healthcare, was that whole idea around, hang on, there's different ways of doing this, storytelling, visual art, performance art, all of those things can create an instantaneous safe space for people to be able to talk about things that can be confronting. And so when I wrote that book, that's the third book I wrote, actually, and it was the first book I wrote for adults. The other two books one was for children and one was for adolescents. But I was very conscious of the fact that adult people who would be reading it would be at all different places through their life and experiencing a whole range of different things. So I tried to incorporate a whole variety of life experiences into that book. And you would know that the foreword was written by my friend Olivia Newton-John, who sadly died a few months back. And I can remember giving it to Olivia before it was published and saying, look, I want you to have a read and see what you think, because we'd become quite close, and I knew what was going on for her. So she came back to me and said, oh, I really loved it, Mol. I love the stories. Can I write the foreword? And I said, absolutely you can. That would be wonderful. So, every time I pick that book up now, it's a living memorial for me of her, and how generous she was to me. But to go back to your question, there's a lot's changed since 2016. And I think primarily it's been not so much out in the community as within our workplaces. So there's a lot of pressure on workforce at the moment that's a result of a comedy of errors, if you like, that a lot of us who've been around for a long time are stepping back from roles that, are 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, because we've had enough of it. Yeah. And we want quality and work-life balance. And there's a dearth of people coming up to take our place. And that's the thing that worries me the most. And to go back to your original question, that's a lot of the reason I took on this role again, was because I see the potential of PEPA in building knowledge and confidence for people who palliative care isn't their core business, but it's part of the work they do. They don't need to be specialists, but they need to have enough knowledge and enough understanding and enough confidence to be able to care for residents and people in acute settings and, you know, in the community.
Yeah.
Care for them in a way that's respectful and that leaves the control with the person that they're looking after, so that we're not doing stuff to people. We are being guided by them and doing things with them to assist them in reaching their goals. And so that's why I went back into PEPA, because I think PEPA has this unique way of approaching that education that's immersive, and the fact that we can offer people placements in a specialist palliative care service means that they get an opportunity to go and see what it's like doing palliative care every single day. And they get to see people at all different stages of their living, and in their pre-death and their death and their after death. And it gives them like palliative care 101, really. It's and it's unique in that way. There's no other program I know of that does that. It's sort of like a micro apprenticeship, really. And knowing that you've got the support of a fully functional, experienced, qualified and supportive team around you to learn whatever it is you've gone there to learn is really unique. So I think, again, linking back with what's changed, I think there's so much opportunity now for learning that sometimes people get overwhelmed by what's on offer, and trying to make a decision about what am I going to get the best bang for my buck, even though it costs you nothing to do PEPA. I reiterate that.
That's right.
You know, people are in a position where they're thinking, you know, what's the best investment of my time, which is equally as valuable as a financial cost, you know, because your time is so precious, and you want to make sure that you invest that time in doing something that you're going to get the most out of, and that's going to give you the best possible experience to be able to improve your practice. And I think PEPA does that. So from my perspective, I think there's a real need to, and certainly in the coming months and hopefully years, that will be my focus in PEPA, is raising the profile of PEPA, getting people to understand that we offer this wonderful program. It comes with no cost, and it creates for you not only this learning experience, but a network that you can then tap into when you go back to your own organisation. So particularly in rural areas where you work in a residential care facility and you go and do a placement in your local palliative care service, all of a sudden you've got a relationship with the people who work there. So when you come across a resident you don't know what to do to support them, you know to pick up the phone and ring Rose or ring Mary or ring Jack or whoever it is, and you don't feel anxious about doing that because you know the people. And I think that is equally valuable. But from the perspective of you guys in specialist palliative care, it gives you the same learning opportunity, because you get to learn from people who come and do placements with you what their challenges are and how you can better support them, and how you can work together to make sure that no matter where someone is living, they get the best possible palliative and end-of-life care that they can get. And I think really that's what palliative care is all about. So investing in our workforce, building people's confidence, making sure that there's a new generation of leaders coming up who are prepared to take on the mantle and run with it and champion palliative care in their workplace, in their community, in their family. You know, I see PEPA as giving people an opportunity to be the go-to person in their family and their community. And I know in my extended family, which, like I say, I come from a very Celtic background. I've got like 67 first cousins and a gazillion aunties and uncles, although most of them are dead now. But over the last 30 years, soon as someone's sick, soon as someone gets a diagnosis, they ring me. When they're looking like they're going to die, I go and I help in the work of caring and nurturing as the person dies, and then help the family plan the funeral and do all of that, because that's what's the point in learning all this stuff? You can't apply it in your own family and your own community networks, you know. So we need more people out there doing that, and doing it in their workplace, yes, but doing it in the community as well, so that communities become far more relaxed and confident about end of life, and more empowered to support each other, not just to run to the doorstep and drop the 5th of 9 casseroles, but to, you know, to be there and do things that make a difference for families as they're going through, you know, the imminent death of someone that they love, and after that death, to support them and keep them engaged with their community.
And to teach those around us to do the same.
Yes. No one is no one is the, as Tony Abbott would say, the depository of all wisdom here. That blew me away when he said that. I love it. But nobody is, you know. And in fact, when I was thinking about our conversation prior to it happening, I sort of always feel a bit not embarrassed, but a bit unworthy of being called an expert, because in my mind, yes, I'm an expert in me, and sometimes I think I'm not even that. But people need to realise that the only expert in the room is the person in the bed. They are the expert in their experience.
That's great.
You know, and for every person around that person, they are their own expert in how they're feeling and what their fears and their anxieties and their concerns are. And if we fall into the trap of thinking of ourselves as holding all of this knowledge and wisdom, it's very easy to go down that path of thinking you know everything, and nobody ever knows everything. You learn new things every day, and being open to that is equally as important, I think, is, you know, being open to what am I going to learn today? What is today going to bring for me that I can incorporate into the work that I do day after day? And it may be something you see on TV. It may be a conversation you have. It may be something you read. It can come from very unexpected places. You know, a random conversation in a supermarket with someone, or, you know, I don't know, anywhere. It can come from anywhere, but it's always being open to that opportunity, and recognizing it at the time for what it is and taking it on board. And I think, you know, in our busy lives, sometimes we miss those opportunities, and we have those interactions and we're on to the next thing before we've actually realised that that was something really valuable that person gave us then. something meaningful to me, but something that may down the track be really meaningful to someone else. So anyway, that's the gospel according to me, Rose.
Yes, I know. When I'm say delivering the reverse PEPA education, or whenever I'm in front of people giving them any sort of talk about palliative care, my thing is to bring, look, it's a holistic care that we always try to deliver, and we, of course, we bring all the resources, and we bring sort of, did you know you could do this, and did you know this was available? We're sort of offering these people knowledge about the things that we can do for them. But I always encourage the people who I'm teaching to bring their whole selves to it as well, and because it's an exchange, and you can't deliver holistic care without bringing all of your own self to it. I think that's where that's the gold in palliative care, that you are sort of really entering into the journey with those people as much as you can, and so then you're opening up your own sort of vulnerability, which means that you can learn stuff. You're not sort of this sort of person with their walls up and maintaining their professional distance and all that sort of thing, because that just never works. And that's what makes palliative care so rewarding and so wonderful. And that's the.
I agree. And look, the thing is, people often think that they need to, in order to protect themselves, they need to have a wall. But protection doesn't come from a wall. We all know that. Protection comes from being open to having an often intimate relationship you have with patients. In an emotional and a spiritual sense. But the protection comes from what you do afterwards, going home, reflecting on what happened, being self-aware, identifying your own gaps and the things you need to learn, evaluating your own practice, and looking after yourself, making sure that when you have a rough day, which we all have, and, sometimes it can be really confronting, and not going home and putting up a wall and pretending that none of that happened, but taking the time to spend on your own, reflecting on what the things were about that experience that had the impact on you. And not trying to rationalize them away, but just acknowledging them and saying, well, for instance, that person really looked like my mother, and it made me feel like I was looking after my mother. So okay, so that's why it had such an impact on me, because I was transferring my own stuff here. And how can I avoid that happening again and having that huge impact again? When I walk into a room and I see someone, I have that automatic, I really like this person, or this person reminds me of someone, either for good or for bad. I acknowledge it at the time. So it doesn't then have that huge impact on me, because I know it's a red flag. It's come up because I know myself so well that I can identify that. But that only happens if you actually invest in yourself and spend time exploring those things, being self-aware, noticing how you do things when you feel under pressure or stressed or rushed, and just taking a minute to have a breath and go, okay, I notice I'm getting really hot now, I'm sweaty. It's because I've got all this pressure on me at the moment. So I'm acknowledging that, and I'm going to focus on one thing at a time and then go forward. But by ignoring it, all that stuff gets poked down, and that's when you get compassion fatigue and burnout, that's what happens. And it's not because people aren't doing their job well. They are. It's that they're not investing in them first. Because until one of my favorite visuals And look, I've fallen into this trap a million times too. So
Yes.
don't think I'm all across it. I'm certainly not. But the visual I use for myself is that I have to have my bucket full all the time, and it's the overflow that goes to other people. Now, people will dip into your bucket without your permission, and that happens all the time. But if you keep refilling it, there's always overflow enough. But if you start dipping into that yourself and letting the level in your bucket go down, all that happens is your bucket goes rusty, and that's when you get compassion fatigue and burnout. So, and it's hard to fix a rusty bucket. Anyone who's tried will know. So I guess what I'm trying to say to people who might be listening to this is please invest in yourselves, because longevity in this space, working in this intensely emotional and spiritually challenging and physically challenging space is very demanding. And you have to invest in yourself as much as you invest, if not more, as much, if not more, than as you invest in your residents or your patients or your community, because everyone benefits then. If you're healthy and happy and good in yourself, that flows out to everyone working around you. And then you're able to be a support to other people. You can't be that support if you're allowing yourself to be depleted, you know?
Yes, yes. And I just recently have spent a bit of time thinking about the team that I work within, and just in general focusing on the importance of the team that you work with, and the need to be very intentional about creating a culture of, I think I've identified that feeling safe within your team is almost the first thing we have to start with. It's that feeling like you can fall apart, you can make a mistake, and no one's going to say, "Oh, you should have done it this way." If you can foster that kind of environment in your teamwork, then that's like 90% of your self-care sort of managed, because working in a team that doesn't support you can just can knock you out.
Oh,
Faster than
absolutely.
lightning. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And the other part of that equation is the damage that you experience when that's not the case.
Yeah.
Doesn't stop at work. It comes home with you.
Yeah.
And so you find, before you consciously know it, there's an impact on the people that you love the most. They're all worried about you, but you're in this space and you're just trying to survive, really.
Yes, yeah.
And so being, I guess, the brave thing in that is being able to admit that vulnerability and be transparent about it, and say to people, if, and I know we've gone off track a little bit here, but it it's all
No, I don't think so.
Interwoven. If you feel uncomfortable in a space with a resident or with a team member or whatever, that you have the courage to say, look, when you ask me to do this thing and I've already got 5 things on my plate, it's overwhelming. So just, can you tell me which thing you want me to do first? And I'll do that, and then I'll come back and do the next thing. But don't keep firing things at me, because it's overwhelming and I can't focus on that many things at once. And as individuals, we all have a perfect right to be able to vocalize that. And look, I know I'm very inclined, because of my personality, to run off this way and that way, doing 50 million things all at once. And on numerous occasions, it's caught me. Even though I've thought I had it all under control, it's got to a point where I've thought, hang on, I took on one too many things, So that's been a really hard lesson for me to learn over the years. And it's happened in my workplace. It's happened with patients. It's happened, you know, outside of work in my community. So it goes back again to that self-awareness stuff. You've got to know where your limit is and don't go beyond it. No matter how exciting the thing seems.
Oh, stop talking, Molly. I'm feeling embarrassed.
It's true. It's true.
Just me all over.
You know, I go, yeah, I'll do that. Yep, I'll do that. Yep, no worries, I'll do that. And then all of a sudden I've got all this stuff and I'm going, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed, you know? So, and that happens at the bedside. When you're at the bedside and it's because, you know why? It's because we're fixers.
Yes.
We want to fix stuff. We want people happy. We want to make sure that everybody has the best possible experience they can have. And often we do it to our own detriment. So again, it goes back to that. You've got to invest in yourself first. Then the flow-on effect is everyone else benefits from that. And your residents will benefit from that because they will see you coming in the morning, not dragging your feet with your head down, looking like you're carrying the world on your shoulders. They will see you come in bright and chirpy and ready for your day and eager to see them. Because, you know, the one thing about residential care that on occasion when I go into some places are fantastic. But sometimes you go into places and you look around and there's all these residents who are so disengaged. People are just coming and doing stuff to them. No one's doing stuff with them. People stand over the top of them and talk down to them. They don't squat down and talk, or they don't pull up a chair. Simple things like that send a very clear message to a resident that, hey, you're valued here. This is your home. We care for you. We have a relationship with you, and it's a reciprocal relationship. We value your friendship. We hope you value ours.
Yes.
And we value your opinions and your life experience and all that other stuff, you know?
To quote Cicely Saunders, you matter because you are you.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. So, sorry, I went off track a bit.
No, I don't think. I mean, my final question would have been, what's the one message you want to convey to the aged care workforce? And I think we've done that beautifully. Take care of yourself.
I've got a little quote that I always think of, you know.
Right, great.
So for some people, this will mean absolutely nothing. But for someone of my generation, for whom Ferris Bueller's Day Off was one of their favourite movies ever, I always remember what Ferris said, that life is short. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. And that's always been my motto. Whenever I find myself running at 100 miles an hour, doing, you know, juggling 50 balls in the air, I just think about Ferris Bueller and I stop. So any of you who are listening to this, who've never seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off,
go watch it.
Watch it, because there's a lot of lessons in that program that you need to see. Much and all as I think Matthew Broderick's older than me, but anyway, that's okay.
Oh, that's a great film. All right. Well, look, Molly, it's been wonderful talking to you. It's been really great, and I really appreciate taking the time to have a chat with us. And we'll hopefully see you around the trap somewhere.
Oh, you will. I'll be around. I may, you know, you never know where I might bob off.
And we'll have some information about Molly in the show notes, wherever this appears, in YouTube to start with, and wherever else we get it on the socials. All right. Thank you so much, Molly.
My pleasure, Rose. See you, everyone. Go well.